There's a story about a boy and his father. They were walking along together when they came across a huge boulder. The boy looked at that stone and he thought about it a little bit. And then he asked his father, "Do you think if I use all my strength, I can move that rock?" The father thought for a moment and said, "I think if you use all of your strength, you could do it." And that was all the boy needed. He ran over to the rock and he pushed on it. He pushed and he pushed and he pushed and he tried so hard that little beads of sweat started to appear on his forehead. But the rock didn't budge. Not an inch, not even half an inch. After a while, the boy collapsed to the ground, utterly defeated. "You were wrong," he told his dad. "I can't do it." His father walked over to him and knelt beside him and put his arm around his son's shoulder, and he said, "You can do it. You just didn't use all of your strength. You didn't ask me to help." The world in which we live tells us that it's all up to us. It tells us that we have to be strong and independent. We're meant to grow up, to get a job and buy a house and fix that house when it and the things in it start breaking down, pay the bills, support a family, and on and on and on. And those things are good and healthy things to be able to do. But as is usually the case with humans, we take it too far. We try to take on the world alone. But yet, when your toilet breaks down and you don't know how to fix it, you know you can call a plumber. When your finances are a mess, you know that you can talk to the bank about a loan or a refinance or debt consolidation. When your job situation looks dreary, you know that there's Indeed.com and you can go there and see what's out there. It seems that we know that there are places we can go for help when we need it. We know who to reach out to for problems like these. So why then do we not do this in matters of spirituality? We seem to think that God thinks better of us when we can do life on our own, when we're strong enough to handle it ourselves. We're like that little boy in that story I shared, childishly thinking that he can do that big lifting on his own without asking his father for help. If we were truly going to our Father for help, we would be spending time in prayer. We would be going to Scripture on a daily basis. And yet, I found a couple studies this week from the Pew Research Center that paint a different picture. In one study, the frequency of prayer among Christians was found to be as follows. 68% of Christians spend daily time in prayer. So the inverse of that is that 32% spend time weekly or less. And in fact, 9% of Christians said that they seldom or never pray. Now buckle up because the next one's a little bit worse. Among mainline Protestant Christians, which would include us as United Methodists, 30% of us spend time in Scripture at least once per week. 13% read Scripture once or twice a month. 12% several times a year. And 44% read Scripture seldom or never. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands this morning. But as I've been saying the last few weeks, Lent is a time of honest self-reflection. And statistically, finding our strength is perhaps an area where we could stop and examine our faith walk. I will personally admit to you this morning that in my own prayer and Scripture time was lacking in the not-too-distant past. And what I've come to understand since then is that time is not just a good idea, it's vital. Otherwise, we're childishly trying to be strong all by ourselves. But we don't have to do that. We shouldn't do that. We weren't made to do that. Let's read what Jesus tells us in Matthew 11, verses 25 through 30. At that time, Jesus said, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned, and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." If you are weary and burdened, and who isn't, really, the only place to find rest, true rest, is in Jesus Christ. And what is rest if it's not how we recharge and renew our strength for what lies ahead? Christians are not strong on their own. We don't come to Christ once and get a supply of strength that we then spend as needed when our burdens pile up. It's not a matter of getting baptized and we're good for life. It's not a matter of sitting in church on Sunday and we're rested and we're strong for the rest of the week. Our coming to Christ needs to be continual. And that's why daily prayer, daily meditation, daily scripture reading, it's not just important, it's necessary. It's time to renew our strength, to remind ourselves where our rest is and then where our strength comes from. You know, children aren't just a good example of how we get things wrong when it comes to spiritual strength. They can also be a wonderful example that we should follow when life gets to be too much. I found some Dear God letters on the internet this week that were written by children, and I thought you'd enjoy hearing a few examples of when children know that they can't bear their burdens on their own. 9-year-old Lois wrote, "Dear God, please help me in school. I need help in spelling, adding, history, geography, and writing, and I don't need help in anything else." Another child had this request: "Dear God, I need a raise in my allowance. Please send an angel to let Mom and Dad know." Nan wrote, "Dear God, I bet it is very hard for you to love everyone in the whole world. There are only 4 people in my family and I can't do it." And finally, "Dear God, my sister Tina has a friend who never stops talking. It would take a miracle to get her to shut up. Do you have any you could spare?" You might be facing some bigger things in your life right now than these. I'm sure the bills piling up, or a scary diagnosis, or the loss of a job, or the loss of a family member or a friend is more of a weight to carry than any of these requests. But the good news is you can find rest. You can find strength. Doing exactly what these 4 kids did. You admit to yourself and to God that you can't do this on your own. Your everyday burdens, they're not going anywhere. So if you've been handling them on your own, stop. It's childish to admit that you don't need help. And it's childish to not ask for it. You're weary and heavy laden. Open your eyes and your heart to a childlike attitude of going to God every day, all the time. Carve out time in your life, in your daily life, for prayer. Find time every day to make that dusty Bible not so dusty anymore. Go to Christ and get your rest and find your strength. And all of God's people said,